What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Celtics Talk Podcast here on the NBC Sports Boston Podcast Network. Got a fun show coming up. I got my buddy Dan Shaughnessy stopping by. His new book, Wish It Lasted Forever, Life with the Larry Bird Celtics. It's a phenomenal read. Get to have Dan take you back to what it was like covering the team in the mid-'80s and just how different it was than everything we're experiencing today. Before we dive into that, just want to quickly touch on the Celtics right now, 8-3 in their last 11 games, back 2 games above 500. Feels like they've turned a little bit of a corner here, and a lot of positives going on, from Jason Tatum being more aggressive at the basket to Dennis Schroeder injecting a little life in this team with his drives, Jaylen Brown coming back and having a big quarter there as he returns from injuries. I think, if you're listening to this on the ramp up to Wednesday night, I think we'll get a bit of a measuring stick game against the Brooklyn Nets, a chance to find out just how much the Celtics have progressed over the past few weeks. But I do think we're starting to see what they can be. Now it's a question of, how does it all work together as they get healthier? Rob Williams and Jaylen returning on Monday night, but they've still got some strides to catch up and get their legs back under them. I think, obviously Tatum is the big story because of how good he's been. I love the aggressiveness at the basket. He's making quicker decisions. It feels like if he plays to this level, the Celtics will have a chance every night. And for me, it ultimately comes down to the offense right now, because the defense has been very good for much of this stretch. You could tell that was always going to be their identity this year. For whatever reason, it was slow getting off the ground, but they've really sort of found their way, at least since Marcus Smart called everybody out and forced them to kind of examine the state of the team at that point. For me, it just comes down to the offense. Tatum's got to be really good for the Celtics to get up into the numbers that it's going to take to compete with the best teams in the league. Jaylen can help that as they sort of figure this out. But, the ball has been whipping around. That Oklahoma City game in particular, really crisp ball movement, guys driving, kicking, and then, going with a secondary action, cutters, things we haven't seen a whole lot of this year. So some positive strides for these Celtics. But I still hold out. Like a lot of the teams in that mix there, the Rockets, the Thunder, games the Celtics should have won. And while they've done a good job getting back above 500, I'm really curious how it looks when they start going up against the real teams of the East. We'll get a little bit of a glimpse with the Nets, the Philly, if they're healthier, a little further out. This is a big stretch for the Celtics. I felt like, they really could have let things slip away. And that's weird to say early in the season, but as they struggled and being sub 500, as they start to get into the more meat of their schedule here, they're going to really have to kind of find ways to stay afloat and keep playing good basketball, so that when they look up in mid-January, are they a contender? Are they in the mix? Because that will dictate what Brad Stevens does from there. Is he a buyer at the trade deadline? Is he selling off pieces? Are they trying to get below the tax? A lot of those decisions will hinge on that. And a lot, I know people are falling in love with Schroeder, but I think, as I've told you on this program before, it's hard to roadmap a future to him on this roster. But all that's in the future. For now, we can just enjoy the fact that the team is playing better basketball and see where it goes. A home heavy stretch here into the new year. But like I said, the competition level is about to go up, and the Celtics have got to be a little bit even more crisp than they've been. It's one thing to stiff arm the Thunder and Rockets at the finish line. It's another when the Nets are on the other side, when Phoenix comes in at the end of the year, when the Bucks come back. So can't wait to see where this team goes. Now, when we talk about really good teams, all you can think about is the 1986 Celtics and the Bird era, that whole original big three. I was just a little pup, and but some of my earliest memories, probably my first ever sports memory was 1986. I was at my aunt's house in Worcester when the Celtics won the championship in 86. I didn't understand why people were celebrating. I don't think I had a good grasp on who Larry Bird and Robert Parrish and Kevin McHale were at that point, but it soon became evident, just how good the team was. And unfortunately, as I kind of became an NBA fan, Bird was starting to fall apart and deal with the back injury. And as Michael Jordan took over the league, but that 1986 team in particular lives on as, the best passing team and just the characters that were on there and the abundance of talent. Dan Shaughnessy went back, and you'll hear how he kind of cobbled this all together and the impetus for it. But it's a fascinating look back on one of the most interesting teams in NBA history. So let's get into it Here's our chat with Dan Shaughnessy. All right, here with Dan Shaughnessy, Boston Globe, and author of Wish It Lasted Forever: Life with the Larry Bird Celtics. This isn't false praise. I started reading it last night at work, and then I looked at the clock after the game, and it was like 12:30 in the morning, and I said I need to go home. I just want to go back. I know you said it in the introduction, but what was the impetus for writing this book?
Thank you, Chris. I mean, the pandemic, like everything, inspired this, I'd say. I mean, when there was no games, it was hard to have all the programs we have, and it was just deadly. The Last Dance became kind of must-watch TV every Sunday, and I'd keep seeing my early 30s self sitting at the table behind all that action, because in those days, the lowly media sat right next to the bench. They hadn't figured out they could monetize those seats for thousands, so it was just us. We could hear everything. And then I know when they started up the COVID bubble, we had been fed all these, your wonderful network sending us the Celtics classics of the 80s. And again, there's me with my big head, my Michael Caine glasses, and sitting there night after night. And it really got my memory going. And then when the bubble opened up and, Gary Washburn went down, it cost $60,000 to send a guy to that. Unreal. And then you were quarantined for 2 weeks and you had to sign a waiver saying you would never approach anyone or talk to anyone. I'm like, well, that's where we did our best work. Mm-hmm. Was waiting for bags, flying commercial, being in the hotel lobby, hotel bar, just on the team bus, going to practice. Everything was open. It was like, I would say, like outside of the groupies and the money and the fame, it was like being on the team, So we were really part of it. And the good part was we could tell the readers what they were like, and really tell the fans what they were like. So that's been lost. It's nobody's fault. It's evolution. And I thought, well, let's go back to that simpler time when the NBA really came of age and turned into the powerhouse that it is today. And that goes back to Magic and Larry coming into the league in '79. And at that time, the finals were on tape delay and a lot of drug issues in the league. 17 out of 23 teams losing money. And lo and behold, Larry and Magic come in and takes off in Boston. They sell out 660 straight games. And it was the thing. And then the Magic Larry, the Celtic Laker, the Magic Larry Celtic Laker finals, it was like Ali Frazier, 1, 2, and 3, and really just gave the league a giant boost. And then, of course, Michael comes in '84, fast forward to the Dream Team in '92, and they're global. David Stern makes it all happen with these great players. And you have the monster that the NBA is today, globally, worldwide, social media, all that stuff. But what you don't have is the connections that we had back then. You've got the moat, and with all the Brown, Tatum, Smart, new coach, who likes who's fighting. We don't know. We're not there, and that's a loss. That's a loss for the fans. So this book is a sort of a love letter to that earlier time. It's funny. It's the interactions the media had with them, all the ball breaking that went on, and ability to. We were just with them all the time, so we could tell you what they were like, and that was a privilege. And everybody knows who won the games and the stats and the Hall of Famers. So I'm not going play by play through 35-year-old, 40-year-old history games here. This is telling you what they were like and how confident those guys were. And your network's done a brilliant job with that. The 85-86 special on that team, it really inspired this book, I would say, because those guys, they weren't worried about touches or money or fame or who was getting the most credit. They weren't hugging the other team after the games. They were not, galvanizing to join each other out in the offseason. Larry Bird wasn't joining Bill Laimbeer to see if we can form a super team next summer. So, you didn't have that. So it just struck me how they were so confident in their own greatness and so secure in that. And it was just great fun. I wish I had enjoyed it more. And Bill Walton on your network named the book. He said, I wish it lasted.
So, and part of me, the reporter nerd in me is fascinated. So did you have to go to Bob Ryan's sanctuary there in the Globe basement and break out the microfilm? And how did you go back and kind of get all the quotes and relive it? How much of that is in your mind? And how much is that? Did you have to go back and how much did you rediscover?
Well, I have a good memory like Bob does. Not quite as good as his, but our memories are good for old guys. And I've got a box over there. I keep journals. I keep my weekly diary and just what happened today. And I write down little things people said. So when I'm covering the Larry Bird Celtics, I'm writing down I knew that wasn't a lot of trust for me. I was sort of a suspect, and they called me Scoop. And if I'd walk into the locker room, Larry'd say, Scoop, do you ever notice how quiet it gets when you walk in here? So, I'd jot down little things like that and just remember the fun. And then, obviously with the search engines and archives of the Globe archives, you can go game by game. Bob and I we kept a book. I mean, when I took over the beat from Bob Ryan in '82, he had these books, and it was like you'd take to social studies class, the ring binders, and we kept the stats. I mean, I know it's all online now. It wasn't then. So, and I'd start, he handed over the season books. It started with Larry's rookie year in '79, and you had each player, all the day by days. And then we started keeping more arcane stuff. Like I'd keep the officials, like what's their record when Jess Kersey's refereeing? What's their record when Dick Pavetta's refereeing? Who gets the most technicals? But it was all very primitive, archaic. So I did drive down to Hingham when I decided to do the book because I had bequeathed my books back to Bob when I gave the beat back. Oh. He gave them to Peter May, who gave them to Jackie. And so there's this stack of old-timey script books, and Ryan has them back in his possession now. I couldn't really sleep at night with them in my house, so I was glad to get them out of here with those precious documents. But between that, my journals, my memory, and the search engines, it was pretty easy to get a linear, to piece it all back together again, what my 4 years on the beat were like.
It's just a crazy experience. Like I can't imagine, because like every day was something. I mean, if I kept a journal now, I'd be like 7 Celtics players walk past me without acknowledging me, and it would not make for a great book. But did you know in the moment how good those teams were, especially that 85, 86 team?
No, I was being a tough guy and a hard-nosed reporter and being careful not to get sucked in and be a fan of hope they win and friends with the players. We were acquaintances and it was funny and there was a lot of chops busting. But I think I probably had too much my nose in the keyboard. When I saw the classics that you guys put out in the 80s ball, I mean, I don't want to be the old guy trying to sell this book as it was so much better then. But when you see that, it was pretty cool. And just, the flow, the passing that they had. You guys did just a passing episode on greatest passing team of all time, I believe. And Danny Ainge told me, he would lobby Casey Jones to get back in the game in garbage time just to be on the receiving end of Bill Walton's passes. And, the joy they had in practice, all the stuff. So yeah, it was something I wanted to go back to, but I do wish I had smelled the roses a little bit more in the moment. And this book's sort of an homage to that because in my view, it was the greatest ball ever played. And we really had a front row seat for that. They would run the picket fence, Chris. What can I tell you?
So a lot of the book and some of the best stories in there are Bird busting your chops and obviously the free throw shooting contest. And I won't spoil everything that's in there, but what are your favorite memories of Bird? We hear he was just such a legendary trash talker and you got it firsthand, but sitting that close, how much could you hear the way Larry Bird was just berating opponents?
He would do that thing. I remember being in Portland the night it was the end and there was a timeout. And as they were inbounding, he told them, here's what I'm going to do. And you need to get this guy over here. And they didn't do it. And he made the shot and then he pointed. I told you guys, as he's walking away, he had another level of thinking. He could keep things in his head while he was playing at the highest level of the NBA. Just weird little side bets he had he would have them with us. But, we sat right by at home. There was the bench, then there was us, and then way down scorer's table, and then the other bench. Mm-hmm. So I remember, Larry, that was all legit, that shooting he would do in the afternoon in the old garden by himself. And his equipment guy, Joe Catato, who he took to Indy with him. And, the dark garden, 4:30 in the afternoon, I'd get in early. I'd plug in my old Stone Age portable computer right by the bench. And he'd be shooting in the dark out there with Joe Q, a little spotlight on the area where they were. And, he always wanted to know what we were up to. He kind of noticed everybody else's business. So, he'd come over and say, Scoop, what are you working on? I'd say, well, actually, I'm working on your free throw streak. This is not the kind of thing you'd say to Nomar.
No.
I'll tell you that. But so Calvin Murphy had the then record. It was 88 in a row. I don't know if it's been broken, but Larry was getting in the 60s. So I had the early edition story for the Boston Globe, goes up to Maine, goes to the Cape. And, you always look stupid when that paper comes out because you don't know who won the game and something happens that makes you a liar. But so I said, I'm writing about your stupid free throw streak for the early edition. So don't miss tonight. Make me look bad. And he says, oh, don't worry about that, Scoop. And sure enough, in the first half, he gets fouled, of course, and he's down our end. he makes the first one and he looks and winks at me before making the second one. I mean, that's the kind of thing. When's the last time Marcus Smart winked at you between pitches?
Yeah, not recently.
He's playing games within his head. And we were in New York and he was starting to bank his threes after winning all the 3-point contests because he was rubbing it in because, Wedman and Danny, they all wanted to be in the 3-point, but Larry wanted the money, so he'd do it. And in New York, he was banking his threes in warm-ups at Madison Square Garden. And the trainer was Mike Saunders, there forever. And he said, "You're not going to do that in a game." Larry says, "If you give me $5, I will." And so, late in the game, they were killing the Knicks, and he banks a three, and he runs by the Knick bench with his greedy palm extended. I mean, this was how he was, how they were. I mean, Dennis Johnson, Ryan used to be carrying on about Larry. I mean, Bob just was in love with Larry so much. It was obnoxious. Everybody got tired of it because, his voice goes really high and, the greatest this, the greatest that. And DJ, one night, DJ used to like to walk it up. He was not in a hurry. And DJ came over mid-court. He was pounding and he dribbled over toward us. And he's like, "Bob, you got to keep it down over here. We got a game going on." He says, And this stuff would happen in the games.
What were even practices like? I mean, were they as fun as the games? Because it feels like if you could take those guys and make them even looser, which doesn't seem possible, it must have been amazing.
The site was Hellenic College in Brookline, Greek Orthodox, very near Larry's house. Whether that was coincidence or not, I don't know. Larry lived like a mile from there, and he had keys to the gym. And the student population was Greek Orthodox students, very devout, not really sports-minded, didn't notice or care about these guys. Red loved that. And the out-of-town media couldn't find the place. No cab driver could find it. I mean, it's like a leafy suburb of Brookline. And so they were basically working in anonymity over there, no problem. And so, we'd get there and sit up in the high school bleachers. And, we used to go out and shoot baskets before practice because we all had our sneakers on, and nobody'd get mad if they came out after getting taped and, before practice started, if we were out there. So that was amazing. And just a good way to kill time. Then they come out and we'd get up to read our papers in the bleachers. And, if anything went on, you were there, you'd see it. And there was a lot of joy. Especially, of course, the last year when Bill had the Green Teamers, with Rick Carlisle and Danny Ainge and Scott Wedman. And Bill Walton has this great quote in the book. He says, "Scott Wedman, there were days he was the best player in the world, and he would match up with Larry in practice, and he couldn't even get it off the bench for us." And they were sacked. So the Green Team, they took a lot of pride in themselves, and they called it, they called the starters the Stat Pack, and they're all about the stats, and we're the Green Team. And of course, the Stat Pack, they were playing 35, 45 minutes a night. Green Teamers had a lot of rest. So in practice, the Green Teamers would go at them. And it got, Bird, Parrish, McHale still did not want to lose. So it got really competitive. Jimmy Rogers, I talked to, he was assistant coach of that team. Jimmy, and, they would officiate the scrimmages, the practices. And Jimmy said, "That's the only time I ever called technicals during practice." He said, it got really heated. And again, it was just fun, and they were all so secure in their own greatness. They were not threatened by one another. It was all about the winning.
So I believe the anecdote was that Bird ran a 5K in Boston a couple days before I can't even fathom. I know basketball players are great athletes and everything, but I just can't envision Jason Tatum jumping in the local turkey trot and then going out and dropping 60. Yeah. I mean, how rare was it? How wild was it to see these guys off the court, know what they were doing, drinking their beer and doing all that, and then be able to perform at such a high level the next night? That
was the Larry, probably the best year. I mean, they won the championship in 84 and 6. He was MVP 3 straight years, which only a couple guys have done. But man, the spring of 85, he was on the cover of Time magazine. I mean, he was all about it. And we were just having so much fun because he got comfortable with us. And, that's when he didn't know who Bruce Springsteen was, right in the middle of the Born in the USA tour. He had never heard of him. I said, "Larry, he's the U of rock and roll." He goes, "Well, he must be pretty good then." And, it just went like that. But so McHale gets the 56 against Detroit, came out of the game early, and because he saw no reason to keep piling on. I called Kev to talk about this when Tatum got the 60 last year. He shouldn't have come out. And Larry said it that day. He said he shouldn't have come out because pretty soon I'm going to get there and I'm not coming out. Well, sure enough, 9 days later, and it was 2 days after he ran the 5K. He ran the 5K on a Sunday in Boston. We fly to New Orleans on Monday, staying at that Hyatt attached to the Superdome. Mm-hmm. The game was at Roberts Arena, this little gym. And on the way to the gym, they went by Rick Roby's high school. And Larry always loved to tease Roby about being a Kentucky guy. And and, getting paid off all the time. He said, Roby's the only guy who took a pay cut to come to the NBA and just go on and on. So we went by Brother Martin High School on the way to the Roberts gym, wherever this game was in New Orleans. And Larry jumped up. He goes, there it is. That's where Rick Roby took all them bribes to go to Kentucky, right there. So he was in a good mood, but he said his legs were a little sore. And it was 2 days after the 5K. And of course, that's the night he went for 60. And we were positioned really well, right behind the Atlanta bench when they were all carrying on. And he did not come out of the game. When the game was over, Stan Kasten, owner of now owner of the Dodgers, he was then ran the Braves and the Hawks for Ted Turner, and he came in with the game ball and presented it to Larry. And that thing's probably rattling around back on one of the pickups now. I doubt it ever got a place of honor on the mantle of the Bird household.
My favorite thing from that game and watching the replay is that the Hawks bench is falling all over itself as you can't, it's unimaginable now when like a bench warmer, if they so much as react when a teammate gets dunked on, they're in the G League 30 seconds later. Yeah. But, back then, like everybody was mesmerized by what Bird was doing.
They got fined for that.
Oh, really?
It was considered a stain on the league that one team was rooting for the player on the other team. And Fratello was fighting one of his guys, Mike Brown, I think, and it was hideous, and Larry just kept going further and further out and making them. It was really funny. 9 days after McHale got the 56, he gets the 60.
How did you feel when Tatum got 60? Because I think there's some Celtics fans that are conflicted watching, it's two different eras, but it's Larry's record. Like it's just weird.
Yeah, I called McHale, of course, because I thought he'd be a good voice of that. And he felt the same way I felt. He was glad he got it, but he was glad it stopped there. He was glad he didn't go past it. So it's kind of best of both worlds. So today's guy gets honored, Larry's name stays out there, and didn't have to be one or the other. So I think it was a happy ending for everybody.
So how can we get to know modern day NBA players? I mean, is that wall just up forever now?
It's nobody's fault, Chris. It's just the way it's evolved. I mean, I'm not the old guy baying at the moon wishing, this is just the way it happened. The moat keeps getting wider. The moat was already there. I mean, there's not a lot of access, but some of you guys were able to infiltrate and, have one-on-one relationships, just talking to guys by their lockers. That's all gone now. I mean, abundance of caution was the last straw, and I don't see it coming back. I mean, the more the leagues can manage the news and have just team websites and, team access and group interviews where everybody gets the same questions and answers, the more they can keep things inside. I mean, if Gary Washburn hadn't been in the bubble, we wouldn't have known about the chairs flying and all that stuff going on in the bubble that year if you didn't have anybody there. And that's basically the case. We're not in there, and I'm sure they love that. I don't blame them. Who needs all our prying eyeballs in there? You don't want to have Larry Bird saying, "Scoop, do you notice how quiet it gets when you walk in here?" You don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah, and it's just so weird. It's been just like you said, it's been a steady decline. Even I came on during the latest big three. KG was stuffed in the back watching his Family Guy episodes. We never saw him, but at least you could get a feel for the room. And now it's just like this Zoom world where I don't know. We're gonna wrap it up right there, and then we're done. And that again, I don't blame anybody, but it's just it makes reliving this team so much fun because no one can ever write a book about the 2020 Celtics that will be half as interesting without getting people
again, this is not us complaining about our access. This is you, the fans, not knowing your team. You don't know what's going on with your team, and that can be frustrating. So it's not, I know people hate to hear about us complaining, so I'm not complaining, we're not complaining, but we're telling you, the fans, you are poorer as a fan to not know this investment that you invest your dollars and your heart and your time into. You just don't know as much about them because we can't get in there and tell you.
How did you balance being critical? You had some great one-liners about guys and but then you had to go see them the next day. And again, I don't know if these guys read what I write anymore. I don't think they care. If it's not on Instagram, I'm not sure they pay attention as much. So, but like, how did you, I inspect the Inspector Clueless and stuff like that. Like, how did you face those guys the next day? And did anyone ever get like legitimately want to fight you mad?
Not like, I mean, Scott Wedman stopped talking to me once, because I wrote about his nefarious trainer. It was like the Brady thing with Guerrero, and the guy got kicked out and Wedman shut me off for days. He was the nicest guy ever. He never talked. And Larry, when I wrote about Larry's barroom fight at Chelsea's, which was hurt the 85 playoff push, Larry didn't talk to me for 4 or 5 months after that. I knew that was going to happen. I understood that, but it was too bad, and he eventually, I think, got over it. He knew he knew he made a mistake there. We all make mistakes. It's okay. But there was no way you could cover it up or pretend it didn't happen, because it affected the fans. It affected how he shot possibly and whether they won the championship or not in '85. So that was the story. But, if a guy's just having 1,000 beers or something, it's not affecting his play, you don't need to write that or get into his business. When it gets into the fans' business, then we do. So, yeah, that would happen. And this little, Parrish had bad spring times. He had bad playoffs a couple of years. I was starting off. So he was always roared out of the gates when they opened season in October. So I called him basketball's Mr. October, which was not a compliment. And Danny Ainge, being a baseball guy, he got that. So, but they really paid attention to what we were saying then. And it's like the thing about Inspector Clouseau, Quinn Buckner was having a rugged patch, and I wrote he played like a man with no clue. And Max, Max, he just loved that. He goes, there he is, the man with no clue, Inspector Clouseau. He still calls him that, So one little throwaway line can create a nickname forever.
It's amazing. It's fun to relive, and that's why I love the book. And now I know everyone's making the same joke. I wish the book lasted forever, because I know I'm going to speed through it in a couple of days, and I'm going to want to know more. I just don't think we'll ever know that much about the team. I want to spin it forward just for a few minutes about now, as you're watching again this 2021 or 21-22, I can't even get the year right, version of the Celtics. What do you think when you watch Tatum and Brown and this team?
Well, I wish I knew them better. I mean, I like Ime Udoka. I think he's a stand-up guy.
Mm-hmm.
We loved the way he was calling them out early, talking about his players getting punked. And I went to shoot around. I could tell they weren't going to win tonight. I don't know if he got disapproval off that in his clubhouse or what, but it seems to have tightened up a little bit. But that kind of bluntness is terrific for us. And we love truth telling. Loved truth telling when Smart came out and called out his teammates and all that. So it's just hard to cobble it together. I don't know what's in the heart of Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. They've been in the league 5 and 6 years respectively, and I think it's time. I'm not going with the youth excuse for them anymore. I mean, that's a lot of years in the league. I know they came into it as teenagers, but let's go. And I hope it feels better. It feels like it's turned a little bit better in the last couple of weeks, ratcheting up the defense and winning games they're supposed to win. The Laker game was fun. The old days, Bill Russell there, and ESPN's there, and they fall behind, they roar back, and Max got the cigar going, and that was great stuff. So more of that, and it feels like it's turning for the better, and kind of creep up the conference a little bit so they can not have that. You don't want to be in that 6, 7, 8 spot and get into the playoffs. I hope they can get out of there.
Do you think the Tatum Brown combo, and obviously they can add more talent potentially as early as next summer, maybe along the way this year, but is that enough? Is that core enough to take this team to a championship?
It's weird now because you think those two, you had Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward here too, and you had a younger Al Horford and a younger Smart, and they got to the conference finals 3 times in 4 years. But I just hope that wasn't it. That wasn't the peak for these guys. So it's not trending in the right way for them, but that doesn't mean it's not salvageable. And I don't know, it's up to Brad to pull another guy or two out of his hat. And the fans are very supportive of this team. They're very understanding. They're very patient. So these guys are kind of living large there. But I just want to make sure that they're about winning more than they're about, all-stars or Subway sandwiches or brands or that sort of thing. And it's just real hard to know when we don't really get inside there or hear too much of them. It's kind of managed very carefully.
Even their relationships, we were so blessed to get Jaylen and Jason to sit down before the season and for 5 minutes. And I was like, oh my God, I almost was scared to waste that time, but there's so much made about how do they interact, and, maybe some of that's overblown, but I do think at least especially when you're the pillars of your franchise, we had to at least know that it was refreshing to hear them talk about it. I wish we had, and I tried to make that pitch. I said, look, this is what happens when you have the access to kind of get inside that. One player that I am curious for your opinion on, just because he's the most polarizing, is where do you come down on Marcus Smart?
The great thing I think about him is that Red would have loved him. Red was a tough grade, and Red could put up with a level of nonsense or maturity, whatever, but the competitiveness, the physicality, the fact that he bothers the other team, you want him on the floor at the end of the game. Red like guys that you want him on the floor at the end of the game, and he's that guy. I see that in him. Some of the stuff we're going to have to, I guess we've gotten used to, shot selection, and I'm not big on the flopping and kicking your leg out or, bitching to the refs on every time down the floor, but but I do think there's leadership qualities there. And again, the people who are inside, they believe in him, and there's too many smart people that believe in him for that not to be correct. I got to think.
One more nerdy newspaper thing. How much, like, because I know you were mad that the Herald called Bird at home after they skipped that road trip. How do you marvel that, you know, not that the newspaper wars ever went away, but it's different. There's 900 of us media now. You know, how different was it back then?
It was competitive, and I mean, the Herald and we didn't really tell each other what time the bus left. I mean, it just was not a lot of help there, not a lot of social. Just, Mike was a great guy, and the Herald was a very vaunted competitor. I mean, I would just hold my breath every morning going out to pick up the Globe and the Herald in my front walk, worried that he had something I didn't have, because you didn't want that to happen. It was very competitive, and they often scooped us. The Herald always had good inroads, with the Celtics. I mean, Steve Bulpett picked up right after Mike Carey, and he was the voice of the beat for a lot of years, and of course Bob Ryan was the god on our side. So we've had great coverage in this town, and formidable opponent, but there weren't as many of us, and there weren't team media people. It was all kind of rivals trying to get the story. Nobody was really on the side of the team. We were on the side of the fans trying to get the story.
One of my first years at the Globe, when I was a Nighthawk, I think so, maybe like late 90s, early 2000s, Gordon Need would call me before after first edition and say, read me the Herald. Yeah. Because he wanted to know what they were. And I love that. I love that. Like, he was that into it, that he was that, wanted to make sure that they had the story ahead of the Herald. And I kind of missed that. I missed, like, trying to you're out trying to outmaneuver your opponent. You're still friendly with them. I mean, especially now. Yeah. Some of my best friends are on these beats, but it is funny how, even having one phone number different than somebody else was enough to.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I knew, Carey was really tight with the players. They played. He was representing Danny Ainge in contract talks while he was covering the team. I mean, that's not really a fair competition when you're trying to compete with a guy. So.
First off, that's a great, amazing story on its own. How did that come about? How does Danny Ainge say, "Hey, newspaper writer, you're going to represent me at this negotiation"?
He liked him. He wanted to have some adult in the room when Red was trying to steal his money, and he just said, "I need a guy, and I trust you. You know basketball. You're a smart guy, and you can." And he represented McHale as well. He was covering the team, representing the players. I mean, that's not traditional. So when he was using his Rolodex to call guys at home when they would load manage the once a year when they wouldn't make a trip, making me look bad, I called Larry on that and I said, "This is horse shit. You can't be doing that. Giving out your number and letting these guys talk to you and freezing me out. Not okay." Anyway, we had some laughs about it.
Can you imagine if Woj walked into a players representative meeting now, and I just like it just blows my mind, the idea that and that even that Red would allow that. Like, it's going to show up in the paper, the negotiation at some point. I don't know. I just
Chris, the summer camp, the rookie camp was in Marshfield, Massachusetts, and Rick Carlisle. When you're a 12th guy on the team, you got to go to that rookie camp. So he would come down even while he was a veteran. And he was driving Mike Carey's car to go to Summer League. I'm like, wait a minute. Nobody ever asked me for my Toyota Corolla, and I mean, the players are driving the writer's car to go to practice. I'm like, well, I don't really have that relationship. I lose.
Well, I want to wrap it up on this. Besides the fact I need everybody to go buy this book. It's the perfect Christmas gift, stocking stuffer, actual gift, whatever you need to do. So for those who don't know, my little inroad to the Boston Globe was, again, I was a Nighthawk. I covered high school sports. I'll never forget, there was a microfilm on the wall, like a printout of it. And it's the bylines on the high school sports coverage from that day, I think were Dan, Leslie Visser, like a who's who. Yes. And I was like, oh my God, this is what you aspire to. And I was lucky enough to come back to the Globe and Boston.com in the early mid 2000s. And I would follow Dan around with a video camera and make him at like 2 a.m. When no one knew what internet video was, describe what he had written. And he was him, Jackie, Bob Ryan, you were all very great about it. I don't know why you put up with that. It was not part of your agreement at that point, but I wouldn't be where I am without you guys being willing to put up with me. And here I am 15 years later, and I'm still calling in favors to you. So my long-winded way of saying thank you for putting up with me for all these years. I do appreciate you hanging in there on some real, like those Gillette nights after like a Monday night football game.
Tough.
That was brutal. I mean, there was, I remember my favorite story though, is I think you canceled the flight to Tampa when the Red Sox looked like they were going to get like maybe 2008. Do you remember this?
Yeah, kind of.
Oh man, it was just, I felt so bad. It looked like they were going to get blown out of a game. They came back. We ended up in Tampa. So those are my memories. I don't have any great memories of the team yet. You know, some of those first years I covered or whatever, but my book is just going to be when we went to spring training in Fort Myers and got to do visit a bunch of restaurants and did a whole playbook of where to visit in Fort Myers. So from I won't even say the new generation. Thank you for being patient with us.
Well, you turned out good. I tune in every game and I listen to your wisdom at halftime and after. It's like good stuff. Keep fighting the fight there. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, well, I'm trying, and I just wish I had the sort of access that makes this book phenomenal. When I'm writing, when I write the history of the 2008 Celtics, and it's got one time I saw KG eat an entire cheesecake on a bus ride, the only bus ride I ever went on, and that's the summary of my book. I hope people will buy it as well. So, Dan Shaughnessy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Chris. Really enjoyed it. Good luck with it. Take care.
All right, good stuff from Dan. Like I really do. I can't stress this enough, and I know he probably didn't love having to sit there and listen to me gush. But when I was a young reporter and I didn't know what to do, following around the likes of Dan Shaughnessy, Jackie McMullen, and Bob Ryan teaches you a whole bunch in a hurry. And the way they were patient and the way they were giving of their time for a young reporter who was just trying to figure out their way. And I mean, I was just trying to do my job and videotape people and get videos so they get their story video on top of their stories the next morning. Back when people weren't watching internet videos, I don't even think there was there probably was YouTube, but no one was putting up our videos there. So I am honored to, all these years later, be able to talk to Dan about what he's doing in the book. And again, I just don't think anybody from this era will be able to write something similar, because the access is so different. And it's refreshing to go back and Larry Bird taking all of Dan's money in a free throw shooting contest. Go buy the book. You'll learn all about it. It's a fun, fascinating read, and you won't believe how quick you burn through those pages while you're reading. And hopefully you wait till after you're done watching this video and liking and subscribing and all that. Everybody have a happy Thanksgiving. We'll be back next week to see how the Celtics fared in this stretch. We'll catch you next time on the Celtics Talk Podcast.